The old couple stood shivering outside the restaurant window as snow drifted silently from the dark Christmas Eve sky. Their coats were worn thin, their hands trembled from the cold, and their faces carried the exhaustion of people who had been turned away too many times. Inside the brightly lit restaurant, families laughed around decorated tables while Christmas music floated through the air. Nobody noticed the elderly couple standing outside, except one young waitress whose life was already falling apart. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. The waitress's name was Emma. At 26 years old, she worked double shifts at a small family restaurant in downtown Chicago. Christmas was supposed to be a season of joy, but for Emma, it had become a season of survival. Her mother had recently undergone expensive medical treatment. Bills covered the kitchen table of her tiny apartment. The landlord had already warned her that rent was overdue. Every day she smiled at customers while silently wondering how she would make it through another month. That Christmas Eve, the restaurant was packed. The warm glow of decorations reflected against polished windows. Red ribbons hung from the ceiling. A large Christmas tree sparkled near the entrance. Customers arrived in expensive coats and ordered extravagant meals while exchanging gifts wrapped in gold paper. Emma rushed from table to table carrying trays, refilling drinks, and apologizing for delays. Her feet ached, her back hurt, and she hadn't eaten since morning. Yet she kept moving because she needed every dollar she could earn. Around 9 o'clock, while clearing a table near the window, she noticed them. An elderly man and woman stood outside beneath a street lamp. Snow had collected on their shoulders. They weren't speaking. They simply stared through the glass at the diners inside. Emma watched them for a moment. Something about their faces unsettled her. It wasn't greed. It wasn't envy. It was hunger. The kind of hunger that steals a person's pride and replaces it with quiet resignation. A few customers noticed them too. Some looked away. Others frowned. One man even asked a manager to close the blinds because the sight was ruining the atmosphere. Emma's heart sank. She remembered her childhood when her father lost his job. She remembered nights when her family survived on canned soup and stale bread. She remembered her mother's tears after pretending she wasn't hungry so Emma could eat more. She knew that look. Without thinking, she stepped outside. The cold air hit her face immediately. The elderly couple seemed startled by her approach. Their eyes lowered as if expecting criticism. Emma asked if they had eaten dinner. The old man hesitated before admitting they had not. He explained that every restaurant they visited was full or unwilling to serve them because they couldn't guarantee they could pay. His voice carried dignity despite obvious embarrassment. Emma glanced back at the restaurant. Her manager was busy. The customers were distracted. She knew the restaurant had strict rules. She also knew she could lose her job. But some decisions come from the heart before the mind has time to interfere. Emma invited them inside. The couple immediately tried to decline. They insisted they didn't want charity. Yet their weakness was obvious. Finally, they accepted. Emma seated them in a quiet corner near the Christmas tree. Several customers stared. A few whispered. One woman even complained. Emma ignored them. She handed the couple menus, but she already knew they couldn't afford anything listed. Instead, she walked to the kitchen and used the little money she had earned in tips that evening. Money she desperately needed. Money meant for rent. Money meant for groceries. Money meant for survival. She spent nearly all of it on the restaurant's Christmas special. When the plates arrived, steam rose from roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables, warm rolls, and slices of pie. The elderly woman covered her mouth. The old man's eyes filled with tears. For a moment neither touched the food. They simply stared at it as if it were something sacred. Emma returned to her work. But every few minutes she glanced toward their table. She watched them eat slowly, savoring every bite. Not because the meal was extraordinary. Because it mattered. Sometimes the value of food has nothing to do with taste. Sometimes it is about being seen. About being treated like a human being when the world has forgotten you exist. As the evening continued, the restaurant grew quieter. Families departed. Christmas songs softened. Snow piled higher outside. Near closing time, Emma brought the couple hot chocolate on the house. The elderly woman smiled warmly. The old man thanked her repeatedly. Emma told them it was nothing. But deep down she knew it was not nothing. It was everything she could afford to give. What Emma didn't know was that several employees had been watching. Some admired her. Others thought she was foolish. The manager certainly wasn't pleased. When he discovered that Emma had paid for strangers using her own tips while customers waited longer for service, he called her into his office. His expression was severe. Business was business, he explained. Restaurants weren't shelters. Employees weren't supposed to make emotional decisions. He warned her that another incident like this could cost her job. Emma nodded quietly. She wanted to defend herself. She wanted to explain. Instead, she simply accepted the criticism and returned to work. After all, she had made her choice. And despite the consequences, she didn't regret it. When midnight finally approached, the restaurant closed. Emma helped clean tables and stack chairs. The elderly couple had already left. Or so she thought. As she stepped outside into the snowy street, she found them waiting beneath the same street lamp where she had first seen them. The old man handed her a folded envelope. Emma assumed it contained a thank you note. The woman squeezed her hand gently. Then the couple walked away into the snow-covered night. Emma tucked the envelope into her purse and headed home. Her apartment felt colder than usual. She sat at her kitchen table surrounded by unpaid bills. Exhaustion settled into her bones. Slowly she opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. It thanked her for reminding two strangers that kindness still existed. At the bottom was a phone number and a request to call after Christmas. Emma frowned. There was no explanation. No signature beyond two first names. No indication of who they really were. She almost threw the note away. But something stopped her. 2 days later curiosity convinced her to call. A calm voice answered. The man from the restaurant invited her to a downtown office building the following morning. Emma nearly declined. She assumed it was some misunderstanding. Yet curiosity won again. The next day she arrived at one of the most prestigious skyscrapers in the city. Her confusion deepened. The building's lobby gleamed with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Receptionists greeted her by name. Security escorted her upstairs. When the elevator doors opened, Emma entered an enormous executive office overlooking the city skyline. And there they were. The elderly couple. Except everything was different. Their clothes were elegant. Their posture radiated confidence. Several executives stood nearby treating them with obvious respect. Emma felt her stomach drop. The old man smiled warmly. Then he introduced himself. He and his wife were founders of a global investment company worth billions. For years they had quietly traveled during the holidays, disguising themselves and visiting different cities. Their purpose was simple. They wanted to see how ordinary people treated those who appeared poor and powerless. Most experiences left them disappointed. Restaurants ignored them. Businesses removed them. People judged them instantly. But this Christmas Eve had been different. Emma listened in stunned silence. The woman explained that true character reveals itself when kindness offers no reward. Emma had given away money she desperately needed. She had risked her employment. She had expected nothing in return. That was precisely why they remembered her. Then came the surprise that changed everything. The couple had investigated her circumstances after Christmas Eve. They learned about her mother's medical bills. They learned about her financial struggles. They learned about her years of hard work and sacrifice. And they wanted to help. Not with a small gift. Not with a holiday bonus. With something life-changing. The old man slid several documents across the desk. Emma stared at them. Her hands trembled. The billionaire couple had created a fund to cover her mother's remaining medical expenses. Every bill. Paid in full. Tears immediately filled Emma's eyes. But there was more. They also offered her a position managing charitable initiatives within their company. The salary exceeded anything she had ever imagined earning. The benefits were extraordinary. Most importantly, the role involved helping struggling families receive support and opportunities. It aligned perfectly with the compassion she had shown on Christmas Eve. Emma could barely breathe. Weeks earlier she had worried about eviction. Now she was being offered a future beyond anything she had dreamed possible. Yet the greatest gift wasn't financial. It was validation. Proof that kindness mattered. Proof that compassion wasn't weakness. Proof that doing the right thing still had value in a world that often rewarded selfishness. Months passed. Emma accepted the position. Her mother's health improved. Financial burdens disappeared. But she never forgot where she came from. She remembered every difficult shift. Every overdue bill. Every lonely night spent worrying about tomorrow. And because she remembered, she dedicated herself fully to helping others. Over the following years, thousands of struggling families received assistance through programs Emma helped create. Food banks expanded. Medical grants increased. Scholarships were funded. Lives changed. All because of one small act of kindness on a snowy Christmas Eve. If this story is touching your heart so far, please like the video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to support more stories that remind us of the power of human compassion. And now, a special request. Comment below, kindness always comes back. Let's see how many people still believe in the power of doing good when nobody is watching. Years later, Emma returned to the same restaurant during Christmas season. The decorations looked familiar. The music sounded the same. Snow drifted outside the windows. But this time she wasn't rushing between tables carrying trays. She sat quietly near the corner where the elderly couple had once eaten. As she looked around, memories flooded back. She realized something extraordinary. The most important moment of her life hadn't been receiving help from billionaires. It hadn't been the job offer. It hadn't been financial security. The most important moment had occurred before she knew who they were. The moment she chose kindness without expecting reward. Because that was the decision that defined her character. The reward simply followed. Many people spend their lives waiting for opportunities to do something great. But greatness rarely arrives in dramatic packages. More often, it appears disguised as ordinary moments. A stranger needing help. An elderly couple standing in the cold. A choice between convenience and compassion. Emma's story became a reminder that we never truly know the impact of our actions. A single meal changed multiple lives. A small sacrifice created a ripple effect that reached thousands of families. And it all began with one waitress who refused to look away. As Christmas lights shimmered beyond the restaurant window, Emma smiled softly. The world still contained hardship. People still struggled. Pain still existed. But so did kindness. And sometimes, kindness has a way of finding its way back home when we least expect it. That Christmas Eve, an exhausted waitress thought she was simply feeding two hungry strangers. She had no idea she was feeding hope itself. And hope, unlike money, never loses its value. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the city in white. Inside, warmth remained. Not because of the decorations. Not because of the food. But because one person chose compassion over indifference. And that choice changed everything. The end.